Welcome to Was That Trauma, the podcast where we dive into life's moments, big and small, and ask the question, was that trauma? I'm Audra Georgieff.
And I'm Courtney Georgieff.
And together we'll explore personal experiences, societal norms, and the messy realities of life. Let's get into it. So we wanted to start the podcast because when we talk and we share our experiences through life, we can kind of connect with each other and also heal a little bit at the same time, maybe even laugh at our experiences, even though they're not technically very laughable, but it helps sharing that experience with a friend, someone you trust, someone who can understand you, and even if they can't understand, will be a listening ear.
Yeah, and I think with our title, Was That Trauma? I think it's important to note that sometimes when we're telling each other our stories, it is one of those things where we are asking, wait a second, was that trauma? Is that why I am the way I am? So that's kind of where we got that name from. I met Audra whenever her and my brother started dating. But my brother and I are really, really close. So when Audra joined our family, it's really important that we were really close, and she's become a really good friend of mine.
This is just something we're doing on the side to bring some joy to our lives, share some experiences.
One of the things that Audra and I wanted to talk about was early childhood memories. Audra, what is your earliest memory, or what memory would you want to look over?
The earliest thing that I can remember was I had to be less than grade school age, so 4 and younger. I had a babysitter that a lot of the kids in the neighborhood went to, and so, including myself. And I remember being really close to that babysitter. She was always very nice to me, seemed to care about me a lot. As she was watching me, she would start making little digs and pokes at my mom. And I honestly don't remember all the specifics because I was probably like 4 or younger. But I know she would just talk about her in a negative way and making it seem like kind of like my dad was the good guy.
Which felt like
mom was the bad guy.
Would it feel like she was fishing for information?
She would fish for information, but also she already knew things. Mm-hmm. So I think that honestly came from some family members on my father's side.
The information she already knew?
Yeah. Some family members on my father's side that was not a huge fan of my mom. I think they would share some information with her. Okay. My cousins would go to that babysitter as well, and everybody lived in the neighborhood. So I think that's how she would gather information about my mom. She would kind of know things, I think, about their marriage and kind of talk to me about inappropriate subjects about maybe like my mom and my dad's closeness and just, essentially like, is my mom still being this way, like some kind of an attitude or...
How old were you again?
So probably 4 or younger when all of this was going on. And it really started to make me, at the time I didn't realize it, but it really started to make me drift away from my mom. When I was that age, I was actually pretty close to my mom. She would kind of make special occasions for us. So my sister would go to soccer practice and she would take me and her would go out to eat, just the two of us, or she would take me to TCBY, which it's not around anymore, but it was a yogurt place. And we'd get frozen yogurt together until my sister's soccer practice was over. I had to sleep in my mom's bed every night. Every night I would go into my mom's bed and sleep in there. And my dad would have to come home from work, pick me up and take me into my bed. So much so that he had a conversation with me saying, hey, you're getting too heavy for me to pick up. I need you to sleep in your own bed. I didn't want to listen to that though. So I still did not do that. And I would just pretend like I was asleep when he came home. And so he would still have to pick me up and take me to bed. So I was really close to my mom. But all that stuff kept creeping into my subconscious, and it really made me start to dislike my mom. I always liked my dad, like they never really talked bad about my dad, And again, I think that comes from the information that was being fed. And my dad was a great guy, but he wasn't always the best husband or the best spouse. My mom had to deal with a lot of stuff.
Did you ever tell your mom or dad that she was saying stuff?
No,
No.
I don't think so. I don't know if I mentioned it when I was older to my mom or not. I mean, I did do this as a preview, and I know my mom listened to that. So I do think, I think when I had my second child is when it honestly really started to hit me hard. And when I was in the hospital with my son, as you know, after I gave birth, I was compelled to call her and talk with her about that I understood her more. And I believe I mentioned about the drift and why I think I was the way I was growing up, because growing up, this affected me so much so to where I could not stand my mom most of the time. Like I did not, I didn't give her any grace with anything really. I would just say disrespectful and just not appreciative and annoyed or whatever you want to call it. And part of that's being a teenager and a kid growing up, and part of it's this in my head that I didn't realize had seeped in so much. Like I would give my dad grace sometimes sometimes, but I would not give my mom the same grace. But this babysitter would talk bad about my mom. She also made it very known that if I ever wanted to run away from home, that they would, because she was married, they would be more than happy to hide me away in her house. And I knew this to be a fact that she would 100% do it, because there was kids in and out of her house at different times. And one of them was a teenage girl, and I can't remember her name. I don't remember a ton of specifics. I just know that she told me that she ran away and she went to their house for safety, and she was taking care of this girl. I was probably 4 or so I don't remember the backstory of her. I just knew she was a teenager. I remember us going to like some country western store one day and picking out some like boots or a hat or something for the girl to have.
Wow.
But I don't remember too many specifics. I just knew that she was telling me the truth and was saying, hey, if you don't like living where you are, you don't want to be around your parents, you don't want to be around your mom, you can come here and you can stay here with us.
How weird.
And so one, getting that into and that was said multiple times. It wasn't just like one off the cuff thing. It was a constant. It was a constant thing. Rag on my mom, rag on my mom, rag on my mom. Hey, if you ever want to come here. So there was one day where I was this little thing, and I packed up my little red suitcase that said go into grandma's house on it. And I packed my stuff up in it, and I walked out of the house, and she literally didn't live that far. It was a street over. So I packed it up and I walked out of my house because, parents back then didn't keep track of their kids. And I started walking down the street to her house. And at that time, my grandmother, who lives close to this lady that was babysitting me, she actually lives on the same street as her, started driving up. And my sister came out of the house and stuff, and we call her Granny, that was my dad's mom, asked, hey, what are you doing? My sister was like, oh, she's pretending like she's running away. And I was just like, I'm freaking pretending to run away. I'm trying to run away. So anyway, then I had to go back into the house, and I didn't
foiled your plans.
Yeah, it did. But I do often think about what would have happened if I had done that, because I was 100%.
She was going to kidnap a 4-year-old.
I was 100% going to go to their house. Like there wasn't a thing where, oh, mom, I'm going to run away and look back. packed up my little suitcase and I truly was going to head to her house. But then I was, stopped. Luckily, in my opinion, thank goodness. But I mean, I was going to head there. But that's my earliest memory. And I wish I had realized sooner how much that changed my mom and I's relationship. So my husband even mentioned something a couple weeks ago about, I'm so glad that you and your mom's relationship is different now than it was before, because he could not understand how in the world I could talk to my mom the way I did. And to me, it was just, I put everything on her. I didn't understand why you couldn't be this type of a mom or do something this sort of a way. And I really feel like it stems from a babysitter at a young age, putting all those thoughts into my head about how my mom is not good enough for my dad and how my mom is just essentially doing all the wrong things and isn't a great person. That is my earliest childhood memory, and one that I think about, honestly, quite darn often.
I mean, not even just the relationship with your mom. This woman sounds crazy. It sounds like she's trying to kidnap you. She caused the problem, and then she gave you a solution that she would hide you in her house. That is a weird thing to say to a child.
Yeah, especially like, you're going to hide me in your house when your house is literally down just on the other street.
Yeah.
It's not even a full block away.
Yeah, that's weird.
So it's very strange. And no, I don't think it was. She was like, oh, we'll secretly call her parents. She didn't secretly call the parents of, there was at least a couple kids that she did that with.
I think it's funny. My brother couldn't understand why you talk to your mom the way you do. I think our mother has passed away, but yeah, there was no talking to my mom crazy. She just slapped me right in the face. So we had different childhoods. So
I didn't get slapped in the face, but my sister did.
Well, I think my mom is a Hispanic woman, and that's what you did with your kids. And if they got out of place, we got whoopings, and we got slapped, and there was no talking back. So
yeah, we had the whoopings and stuff too, but not necessarily the slappings too much.
Yeah, I got slapped. I don't think Gamlin did. I know I did a couple times. So I think the last time she geared up to slap me, I think I was in 6th grade. And I had been going back and forth from her house, and my parents were divorced, and from her house and my dad's house. And when that hand came in the air, I told her, if you hit me again, I will never come over to your house again. This will be it. And then she didn't. So oddly enough, the year before that, the reason I went to move with her is my dad had come home, and I was in 5th grade, and he expected the kitchen to be clean and all the dishes to be done, and like I was his housemaid and I was a kid. And he cornered me in the kitchen, and he raised his fist in the air, and I was like, don't hit me. And I remember yelling, and then he realized what he was doing, and he was like, I would never hit you. Like you were in, he had never punched me. I mean, he had never done anything like that. But it was, I don't know if he just had a bad day or what, but that was the moment. I think shortly after that is when I moved with my mom, but that was a whole other dumpster fire. Backstory, my parents are divorced. My parents had kids really young. I know that's an excuse for people, and I think that's awesome. That's not an excuse for me. I had my son when I was 20.
No leniency there.
No, I have no leniency for my parents and their poor parenting and the things that happened to me. So I think with my brother, we have different childhoods experiences. My brother's 5 years older than I am, and there were some things that happened with him when he was little, but my parents just kind of checked out after they got divorced, and I was just kind of 10 and just kind of there. When they did get divorced, I'm not going to tell the full story, but to give some backstory to this story, my mother went and started a relationship with my uncle, which is my dad's brother. And my uncle was a drug addict, alcoholic. He beat women. But he was fun. So
a winner.
Oh, he was a winner. My I have family members that remember him as a good time, and that's great. As the child in the house with him, it was not great. Actually, just a side flash of a memory. When my parents were still married, I do remember very clearly two things about my uncle. Number one, my mom, these are things that I look back and I'm like, why was I brought to this? Like, and where was my brother? Although I think this must have been in the summer, because in the summers my brother would go to San Antonio and they would help take care of him, or he'd be with my other grandmother.
Right.
So I was just there. So there was one time I was very little. I know I was very little, and my I guess my aunt at the time, which was his wife, my uncle's wife, had called my mom or somebody. I don't know. I don't know. I was just living my life. And all of a sudden, there was a rush to get. It was me. I want to say my dad was there too. I feel strongly he was there. My mom was there. They were both in the front seat. And we pull up to my uncle's house, and my aunt comes running out of the house, and she is black and blue. Her face is beat. And she looks to hell like someone had beat the shit out of her. It was him. And she gets in the car and she's crying, and we drive off. And I just remember, like, as an adult person, I'm like, why was I there? Like
Right.
what was that thought process?
Leave you at home.
I don't know. I feel like, couldn't my dad
Would that be different trouble?
Probably it would. Well, that happened, right? So like that did happen. So if it was okay then, why was it okay? I think about, like, why couldn't my dad have won? Why did I have to see that?
Also, yeah, why did both of them have to go?
I did not need to see that. So there's some background. So one of the memories I also have, or the other memory I have of my uncle, this is to show how callous he was. He was a good time. I will give you that. When he was not drunk or, in prison or doing other things, he was fine. I mean, we had at that time what I thought was a decent relationship. But as I got older, like, I realized, hey, this person's got problems, like, and I shouldn't see this because I'm a child. But, like, another thing he did, and my mother told me, and this is again one of those things. I was little, and I'm like, I don't know why you told me this story, but it has always stuck with me. So my mom had told me that my uncle had two dogs. It was Chester and Chrissy, and it was an American Eskimo, and then I forgot what the other one was. He was some kind of, I don't know, some kind of mixed dog. And Chrissy came to our house, and she was with us. She was the American Eskimo, but Chester wasn't there. And my mother, I was fully a child. So I said, well, where's Chester? And she said, well, Michael didn't want him anymore. So he took him out to a field and he told him to run, and then he shot him. And that is what my mother told me as a child. And I remember I was very upset. So you told my mother, but he told me if I want to rescue Chrissy, I could come get her. And so she did. So that's my uncle.
So that one probably would have gotten shot too, I guess.
Yes. I think that was the goal. All of this to say, so when I did live with my mother, briefly, after they got divorced, when they got divorced, I chose to live with my dad. That can be a story for another time. But when I did decide to live with my mother, or maybe I was visiting, I can't remember which situation it was. Michael was in prison somewhere in Texas. But I know we live in Dallas, and I know I want to say it took a good hour. I was a kid, so maybe it was closer, but I don't think we have anything that close. I think it was Huntsville. I feel like it was Huntsville, but I could be wrong. Again, I was sixth grade, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I remember it was summer, or it was hot, because it's Texas. It could have been any time of the year, I guess. But I remember it being I remember it being very hot. And she was like, hey, we're going to go visit Michael. And I was like, oh, okay. And so we drive out there. It's a long drive. And we get there, and she rolls the windows down in the car. And mind you, this is 5th or 6th grade. Maybe 7th, but I doubt it. It was 5th or 6th grade. She rolls the windows down. And she goes, okay, you wait here. I can't bring you in. I'm going to go inside. And then she left me out there in a parking lot for a prison.
Yeah, in front, yeah.
Yeah. And it was hot. And, back then you had the radio. right? But she wasn't gonna let that.
Well, back then also you could leave your kids in the hot car.
Yes. Oh,
nobody
Galen and I
cared.
My brother's name is Galen. Galen and I fully, I remember multiple times of being in a hot car. So.
Very much so. How we didn't die, I don't know.
But I don't know if she actually left the keys in, because that would have meant her battery would have run. So I don't know that there were keys in the car. I think I had like coloring books probably. And it was normal. It was like, this is what you're going to do. You're going to sit in this car at this prison. I'm going to go in here and leave you. So, I think as we go through the stories that I have, when I tell people those stories, I realized there was a problem. Because what I thought were funny stories, because my mom laughed at them, when I would tell other people, they didn't laugh. And they were like, hey, that's sad. Like, that prison story was funny to me at one point. I was like, yeah, that's hilarious. She just left her kid there. That's funny to me. Because my mom laughed, and that's what I grew up with.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think our parents a lot of times laughed at a lot of that stuff. And then when we got older, we would replay it in our head, or maybe somebody would point it out, and we'd be like, wait, that's really messed up.
It's like, wait a second, was that trauma? that's kind of where this is coming from. I think there's a lot to just dig into. I don't know that I'll dig into everything that I have.
Well, but we'll see. I think we need to get some drinks into her at some point, because I think that's when our dialogue starts flowing, is when we're truly relaxed and comfortable.
Yeah.
But there is a lot to talk about. I'm sure everybody has their own stories, but I know for me, the goal is to share those. One, you're not alone, right? Two, as I talk about them, it starts to heal parts of me. I'm not sure how you feel about it, but I know when I get down or I start to feel, I don't want to say depressed, but when I'm having my own episodes and I can't get out of my own head, sometimes the only way I can stop it and to feel better, even though I don't like talking about when I'm going through a lot of personal issues, I don't like talking about it with anybody. And I try and keep it to myself as much as possible. But then when I do finally break down, because that is ultimately what will happen, I have to break down so I do not do something wild and change everybody's life forever. And so I will talk about it to my husband, and that honestly, it truly saves me. It just having somebody listen and be there while I spew or cry or, whatever it needs to be, helps me a lot. So I hope that is what this podcast will be for the both of us, a healing journey to understand ourselves better, where all this comes from, and to make us better people and better parents too.
Yeah, I think, especially me, having an 18-year-old, he's a senior in high school. I think that's been a struggle, like my own mental health. And then he actually has his own disability, his own learning disabilities. And so, a running joke with my family is he had a lot of emotional issues that we couldn't get anything diagnosed properly. He has ADHD. So there's that, but then he had some other things going on as well. And there would be two crazy people living in a house, is what we would say. So it would be, he would have we couldn't, we were actually just talking about this the other day. He needed someone to comfort him in a way that when I was in an episode, could not comfort him.
Right. Yeah, I think it's hard, especially with him not being formally diagnosed with certain things, which now, so my son was recently diagnosed with autism, and we've had conversations about thinking maybe they didn't have enough data or the right questions, or things have evolved more to where possibly your son would have been diagnosed with that, because they are extremely similar. I mean, you could almost clone
Yeah.
them to how similar they
And their
are.
experiences are
And
starting to line up.
yes, if you had, so say he had, and he was tested, her son was tested when he was younger, but they said that he did not have autism. But with the way my son is and him being diagnosed, we really think that could have been a misdiagnosis.
Yeah.
And
I think part of that, though, is also money. I mean, money was a big part of it, and insurance, and being a single mom, and trying to help him the best I could without knowing what resources are. You don't know what you don't know. So I think that was another hurdle that we kind of went through, and it was just like, all right, well, if this doctor says you don't have it, I guess you don't have it.
Yeah, it could have been, it could have been the facility that was used, and let's just say everybody did their best, and it just didn't come back that way. But with us having that diagnosis for our son, we know that when he's having certain episodes, we know he physically cannot, doesn't make it any easier sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes it still drives you crazy, and it makes it hard to have patience. But you would have had those extra patience, or you would have had the little extra amount saying, okay, I know he cannot physically control this, what's going on. And you would have had that extra tool as a parent, but not having that, it makes you parent a different way.
Yeah. I do want to say though, like though we didn't get him a diagnosis. Though I am a single mom, I was very fortunate to have family to grab him when I couldn't do it anymore. Not forever, not that he wouldn't lived anywhere, but there were times where I would call my aunt and I'd be like, I can't do this. I can't, I don't know what to do with this. And she, great, I'll be there in just a minute. And she would pick him up, and that was it. And we'd move on. And I mean, even with his dad's mom, when he was really little and his dad and I were not together, there was one time, like, he was so little and he would just, everything was done. Like, he was pretty easy baby for the most part. But there was just times where he would just, I did everything. I fed him, I held him, it's part of being a mom.
Yep.
And he wouldn't stop. And there was one time I was like, I put him in his crib, I put the camera on him, I walked out, sat on my patio, and I called his grandmother and I said, I can't do this. I need help, and I need someone to help me.
Yeah.
And she came and got him, and so I had those supports, and even my brother had help with him. There was times too, but I mean, it's still hard. I mean, it's not always. It's sometimes we just had to deal with it in the moment. I can't have someone grab him every time that we had butted heads, so.
And that's what makes it harder for a single mom, because, luckily I have Ganlin here. So when I see him start to get too impatient, I try and take over. And when he sees I am not having it and too impatient, he takes over.
Yeah.
And that it's so much harder on single parents. Yeah. And I see that with you. I see it with my sister. You don't get that break. It's a constant. So.
Yeah. On the same token, it's also like when I know, I think with my son, I think that when we did have those issues and we did have those problems, once things cooled down, I tried to always make it a point to be like, hey, that wasn't right. I shouldn't have said this. This isn't your fault. I'm responsible for my own, the way I talk to you or anything like that. And then, but I never wanted him to grow up thinking like, oh, well, people can be mean to me because I did this wrong thing or whatever.
Right.
So, but and then at the same token, I'd like, when this happens again, this is how we need to handle this.
We're just trying to parent our best millennial self that we can parent.
Yes.
We're trying to heal from our parents and hopefully create not as much trauma to our kids, although I'm sure they will have their own, and they will try and not pass it on to their own kids. That's just the whole cycle, right? You try and do better for your kids than what was done for you, whether it's financially, mentally, anything. You try and make it better for your children. On that note, we will wrap it up. We should have, I'm guessing, weekly episodes. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's the goal. Bear with us. We are just starting this, so I don't know how well the sound is going to be, and I know you're going to hear And you're gonna hear ahs. You're gonna hear some chairs creak, but we are working on it. Just deal with us for now, and I promise it's gonna get better. We're new at this, and we just really wanted to share our life stories, and hopefully it could help other people. That's it for this episode of Was That Trauma? Thanks for joining the conversation. If you enjoyed today's discussion, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share with a friend. You can find us on all major podcast platforms. Until next time, keep questioning, keep growing, and take care of yourself.